Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fptradio.com. Today is a special day in the minds of many Americans. Today is Monday, May 25th, which means that it is Memorial Day. And the reason I say that it's a special day for many Americans is because it's the day that most people celebrate war. And they don't realize that they're celebrating war. They claim that they are honoring the men and women who have served. But yet that's really the point of Veterans Day, is to honor those who are serving. Memorial Day is that day that you're supposed to remember the people that have died because of the horrible thing that is war. And most of the people in America that celebrate this as something other than National Barbecue Day, they really get upset when someone tries to promote peace, or if someone tries to say that war is a horrible thing. And I forget the exact quote from Smedley Butler, where he is famous for having said war is a racket. But the quote is even longer, where he talks about why war is a racket. And Smedley Butler is, I believe, the most decorated Marine in American history. So, like, this isn't just some guy making a quote. Like, this was a guy. He was a general. And he is saying that war is a racket. And I saw something that popped up in my Facebook newsfeed again last night, where it was a scene from MASH, the old TV show that was set. It was supposed to have been about Vietnam, but it got changed to be about the Korean War. And one of the doctors is talking to the priest, and he says, "War isn't hell. War is war. Hell is hell. And of the two, war is worse." And the priest says, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, tell me, Father, who goes to hell?" And the priest says, "Well, sinners." He says, "Exactly. There are no innocent bystanders in hell." And this, again, if you believe that hell exists, there are no innocent bystanders in hell, is what the guy says. And he continues, he says, "But in war, you have women and children that are killed. You've got civilians, people that aren't even fighting, people that don't want to be fighting." He says, "Aside from a few of the brass, everybody in war is an innocent civilian." And that's really what war is, to where now, with this new technology where they're using drones, and it was supposed to reduce the number of civilians that are being killed in war, there are actually more civilians dying in war now than there ever have been in the past. And a lot of that has to do with the way war has changed, to where, centuries and millennia ago, you would have rival rulers that would go into a field and they would fight. And then it became a thing to where rival rulers and their personal armies would go into a field and they would fight. And then it expanded from that to, it was no longer the rival ruler and their personal army. It was the rival ruler, their personal army, and the army of every group that they could find to fight on their behalf, fighting against another ruler and his army and every group he could find to fight on his behalf. And then at some point, the rulers stopped going out to fight. And it became, instead of the rival armies meeting in a field and fighting, you would just have rival factions running through neighborhoods and through cities and towns and, civilian populated areas killing each other. And that is what is making modern warfare so much more horrible than what war was 100 or even 200 years ago. Not that war has ever been glamorous. And yes, I know that there are some people that think that war is glamorous. And that is something that I would love to see changed in our culture, to where instead of looking upon these people that have really not done anything to protect your freedom, which is the lie that you're being told, right? That, these brave men and women are fighting for your freedom. They're not fighting for your freedom. They're fighting for the special interest of whoever is dictating them to go do a thing. And in the case of the American wars that have happened, and I use the term war loosely because it's not an official war. There's not been one of those declared since 1942 as part of World War II. That ended in 1945. But you've got Korea, you've got Vietnam, you've got Grenada, you've got the Gulf War thing that's been going on for 30 years or so. You've got all of these other fights that are happening to the claim is, protecting American freedom, because if we don't fight them over there, we'll have to fight them over here. And that just assumes that there has to be a fight. And I'd say that no, there doesn't have to be a fight. Like, my life and my liberty is not in any way being harmed by whoever they are, wherever they happen to be. Like, you don't need to go kill people on my behalf. If you really want to fight for my freedom, then you will arrest the lying politicians that have made laws that hinder my freedom. You would arrest the lying politicians who authorized the collection of metadata, even though a court said that that's not exactly what they did, but that's still what the agency is saying that they're going to do. You would arrest those people. You would arrest the people that have infringed upon my rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those are the real enemies of freedom, not people that happen to live on the other side of the world that some president says, well, we have to go kill them because they're an enemy to our American freedom. And they hate us because we're free. No, they, and in this case, they are the people in the Middle East, hate us, the us being America, because the American government has been intervening in their life and in their culture for the last at least 60 years. So that is why they hate us. It's not because of any supposed freedoms that we have. It's because of interventions by our government into their lives. So instead of using Memorial Day to celebrate the American soldier, what you should really do is use Memorial Day to remember the actual victims of war, not just the men and women in uniform that have died supposedly defending your freedom, but think about all of the men, women, and children who were not fighting on either side that were killed because of some remote control airplane dropping a missile on a wedding party. Think about those people. Think about the hundreds of thousands of civilians that have been killed in the war on terror. There's more when we come back.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
FiendPhone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of FiendPhone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve FiendPhone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
FiendPhone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I want to read to you a post that I made on Facebook last night that really sums up what Memorial Day actually is. And then there's song lyrics from a song called The Universal Soldier that I want to read. And then I've been thinking a lot about the question of what if there was a war and nobody showed up to fight? Because I definitely was not old enough to remember that was one of the slogans of the Vietnam War because I wasn't alive during then. But I've heard the phrase and I've seen the pictures and, heard stories about people that were protesting the Vietnam War. And that was one of the things of what if there was a war and no one showed up to fight? And I sort of touched on that a little earlier in like the history of war sort of thing. But let me just real quick share this post that I made on Facebook last night. On this Memorial Day, take time to remember the casualties of the wars waged by the U.S. government. Those victims include countless thousands of civilians killed in the war on terror, millions who have had their lives destroyed in the war on drugs, millions born into generational poverty because of the war on poverty, and your rights as a free human being, which have been consistently eroded since the United States government was created. That's what you need to remember on Memorial Day, is not just some guy in a uniform. Don't go thank that guy for your freedom. He did not give you freedom. That's the lie that the government tells you. You have freedom because you're a human being and everybody has equal rights. Now, of course, and I've talked about this before, to where not everybody has the equal opportunity to exercise their rights, but that does not mean that you do not inherently have that right. You don't have rights because somebody wrote something on a piece of paper. You do not have rights because somebody went and killed somebody else. Blood does not give you rights. Like, we're supposed to be past the whole blood sacrifice thing, right? Like, we're told that, blood sacrifice is a barbaric, ancient ritual, that it was uncivilized cultures that had blood sacrifice. And I'm sure you've seen the picture where it's, like the Mayan guy about to sacrifice a human body, and it's like, if you don't like human sacrifice, become a Mayan and change the system from the inside. But, like, human sacrifice was supposed to have gone away hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, but yet here in America, we still have blood sacrifice. We just call it war, and we call them heroes now. So if you go and you die in some far-off, mysterious land for some reason that you don't even know why the hell you're fighting, then essentially you're a blood sacrifice supposedly for freedom. But no, I hate to tell you that the men and women and the children who are being killed in these various wars, they're dying in vain. They are not dying for the cause of freedom. They're dying for the cause of war. So there's a song that I first heard about 7 years ago. And it was sung for the first time I heard it, it was sung by Amy Allen. And she sang the song upon special request by Ron Paul at the Rally for the Republic in Minneapolis, Minnesota back in 2008. And it's a song that it really speaks to me on a certain level. And I think because And I've talked about this briefly in the past. When I was 18, I almost joined the Marines. I had started signing the paperwork, and then I became a conscientious objector and never actually went to boot camp. So some people don't consider me to be a real conscientious objector because I never actually was enlisted, but I still consider myself to be one, and I'm sure if I ever got a hold of my military record, whatever record there is, it would probably say that. So this is a song that really speaks to me because I almost became this person. And I would play the song, but I don't want to, run into like a copyright sort of thing and have the episode pulled down. So I'm just going to do my own reading of the lyrics. And no, I'm not going to try singing the song. But the song was written by Buffy St. Marie, and it was written back in, I believe, the 60s as an anti-war protest song. And it starts, he's 5'2", and he's 6'4". He fights with missiles and with spears. He's all of 31, and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a Catholic, a Hindu, an atheist, a Jain, a Buddhist, a Baptist, and a Jew. And he knows he should not kill, but he knows he always will kill. You'll for me, my friend, and me for you. And he's fighting for Canada, he's fighting for France, he's fighting for the USA. He's fighting for the Russians, and he's fighting for Japan, and he thinks he'll put an end to war this way. And he's fighting for democracy, he's fighting for the Reds. He says it's for the peace of all. He's the one who must decide who's to live and who's to die. And he never sees the writing on the wall. But without him, how would Hitler have condemned them at Laval? Without him, Caesar would have stood alone. He's the one who gives his body as the weapon of the war. And without him, all the killing can't go on. He's the universal soldier, and he really is to blame. But his orders come from far away no more. They come from him and you and me. And brothers, can't you see? This is not the way to put an end to war. And the reason that this really speaks to me is because it puts it on a different level than what most people think of when they think about war. When most people think about war, they think about the person giving the orders. And the person giving the orders is to blame. No, the person giving the orders, yeah, they're certainly partially to blame. But if no one listens to their orders, then they have no one to order around. And that is really the way you answer the question. What if they gave a war and no one showed up to fight? Then you would have Caesar standing there alone, fighting his own damn war, dying for his own damn cause. You would not have nameless men and women going off to do other people's bidding. But because people celebrate this and they look up to and they're like, this is something that you should achieve when you're a kid, like a man in uniform, rah, rah, rah. But that's really the opposite of how you end war. You don't end war with more war. More war creates more war. You end war with peace. And to paraphrase something that Lee Wright said a few years ago when he was seeking the Libertarian Party nomination for president in 2012, he said, you don't wage war against war, you wage peace. And how do you wage peace? By stopping the fight. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So my daily rant is over for now, although I might just start ranting in the middle of this article that I have from Ars Technica about a man who is a victim of the drug war. He's a man who is probably going to spend the rest of his life in prison. I hope not. I do hope that I am wrong, and I would be very surprised if come Friday the judge gives him less than 30 years in prison. The man that I'm speaking of, Ross Ulbricht. The story comes from Ars Technica, and it's actually, I believe, written by... no, it's not written by Lynn Ulbricht. She's the one that took the picture. The article written by Cyrus Farivar, and the article begins, convicted Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht and no less than 97 of his friends and family members have written to a judge just days prior to the sentencing, asking her to impose the most lenient sentence possible. Ars has posted the letters online along with court filings of photos of Ulbricht and many family and friends. Under federal mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines, Ulbricht faces at least 20 years in prison and possibly as long as life behind bars. He wrote his own 1.5-page letter to U.S. District Judge Catherine Forrest, which was filed on Friday. The quote here is, Silk Road turned out to be a very naive and costly idea that I deeply regret. The letter continues, as I see it, a life sentence is more similar to, or rather more similar in nature to a death sentence than it is to a sentence with a finite number of years. Both condemn you to die in prison. A life sentence just takes a little longer. If I do make it out of prison, decades from now, I will not be the same man, and the world will not be the same place. I certainly won't be the rebellious risk-taker I was when I created Silk Road. In fact, I'll be an old man, at least 50 years old, with the additional wear and tear prison life brings. I will know firsthand the heavy price of breaking the law, and will know better than anyone that it is not worth it. Even now, I understand what a terrible mistake I made. I've had my youth, and I know you must take away my middle years, but please, leave me my old age. Please, leave a small light at the end of the tunnel, an excuse to stay healthy, an excuse to dream of better days ahead, and a chance to redeem myself in the free world before I meet my maker. The article here concludes, or rather continues, Ulbricht's own letter marks the first time he has shown any public remorse during the entire saga, during which he did not testify. His attorney, Joshua Draytell, spun unsubstantiated theories that while Ulbricht created the Silk Road, unnamed mysterious others took over the website and should be the ones prosecuted for the crime. Draytell previously vowed to appeal the verdict. In February, Ulbricht was convicted of 7 charges, including 3 drug counts, distributing or aiding and abetting the distribution of narcotics, distributing narcotics or aiding and abetting the distribution over the Internet, and conspiracy to violate narcotics laws. He was also convicted on a 4th count of conspiracy to run a continuing criminal enterprise, which involves supervising at least 5 other people in an organization. In addition, Ulbricht was convicted of conspiracy charges for computer hacking, distributing false identification, and money laundering. Judge Forrest also received letters on Ulbricht's behalf from people from various points in his life, ranging from his parents to even current and former inmates. His mother, Lynn Ulbricht, wrote to the judge, "You had the opportunity to sit across the courtroom from Ross for almost a month. You know the entire time. Even when the devastating verdict was read, he conducted himself with dignity and equilibrium. He was unerringly respectful to the court and the people handling him. This is not an incorrigible criminal. This is someone who is civilized, ready to cooperate and endure what he must in the hopes of returning to society as a law-abiding citizen. It is someone who can be corrected with the least amount of time allowed. More than that is far greater than necessary." And his father, Kirk, wrote a letter as well, and this reads in part, "The Silk Road was created in hopes that something good would come of it. As history has shown, it quickly spiraled out of control. I know Ross regrets the decision to launch and operate the website. He told me that in our visits with him in prison. I have seen a very pronounced change in his attitudes toward life in general, and in particular to the law and the consequences of breaking the law. He is a very different person now than he was before his arrest. The experience of a year and a half in prison has matured him more than 15 years of life on the outside would have. Judge Forrest, please consider that the illegal aspects of Ross's Silk Road experiment represents a complete departure from the trajectory of his life. Please consider that Ross shared an old house and lived with a grad student when he was arrested. He did not start the Silk Road out of greed. Money was never a motivating factor for him. He did it because he had an idealistic vision of freedom for all. Just as the French Revolution was born of an idealistic idea of freedom and then became a nightmare that consumed its founder, so reads the story of the Silk Road." The article here continues. The claim that Ulbricht was not motivated by money ignores the fact that federal agents seized 144,000 Bitcoin from his computer, the cash worth around, or cache, I heard varying things on how you pronounce this, C-A-C-H-E. The cache was worth around $17.2 million when he was arrested. Okay, so just because someone has money does not mean that they were motivated by money. And secondly, would it not have looked incredibly suspicious for this guy who was essentially, unemployed as far as his friends knew, to suddenly just start giving away millions of dollars to people? Like, that would have been incredibly suspicious. But I digress. The story continues, and, well, I won't have time to conclude with the story. But I will say that the sentencing is Friday, May 29th, 1:30 p.m., Manhattan Federal Court. And the Ulbricht family is asking supporters to show up. And if you show up, please be respectful. Don't forget, every Wednesday is the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions, ama@fppradio.com. And the show, all the archives are online, fppradio.com.